In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Tonight, family, we welcome a man whose life work sits at the intersection of discipline, compassion, and transformation. In a world where our schools are struggling to balance structure with humanity, where our young people are searching for guidance, and where leadership is too often reactive instead of visionary, there stands a brother who has dedicated more than 3 decades to showing us what excellence looks like in action. Dr. Robert C. Cooper II is not just an educator. He is a culture builder, a system thinker, a leader forged in the fires of real classrooms, real communities, and real challenges. From the band room to the principal's office, from the alternative education to district leadership, from author to CEO, Dr. Cooper has lived every chapter of the educational experience. Tonight, we explore the man behind the discipline, the scholar behind the systems, and the heart behind the leadership. This is America in Black and White. This is season 4, episode 92, and this is a conversation you don't want to miss. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Robert C. Cooper, please.
Good evening.
Hey, sir, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Just one correction, not the principal office, the assistant principal's office.
Okay. Well, is there anything that you'd like to say to our audience before we get into the show?
I'll speak a little bit about myself. My upbringing, I was brought up as an only child. I have 8 sisters and 2 brothers from previous marriages. Of both my parents. I'm the only child from their union. And my dad was a city bus driver by day and a jazz musician and vocalist, bass player by night. My mom worked several different jobs. She was the ferocious one who motivated me, gave me confidence, and wouldn't allow me to fail. My dad was the wise, soft-spoken one who I never wanted to disappoint. And though I had both parents, my work as far as wanting to help young men and also assist young women that are single parents, it doesn't come from a place of I don't know what it's about because I have both parents. It's quite the opposite. During my experiences, both in education and in life, going through school and friends, I saw a need for me to actually have some input and give some advice along those lines.
So, well, as we get into the show, let's start actually, with what I call the reflection on the early influence of letting people get the opportunity to know a whole lot more about you. Can you tell us who was Robert Cooper before the titles, degrees, and leadership roles?
I was a young man that did the bare minimum, to be quite honest, just to make sure my mom wouldn't be quite upset with me. So if I didn't have to study hard and I could get a C, I would do that. I didn't consider myself to be a bright individual, and it's about the light bulbs. I'll speak on that later on about light bulbs. But I didn't think I was more than an average student. I had really no desire to apply myself, and until I saw a band in high school. I saw Florida A&M University band, and I wanted to be in that band. And I realized that was an avenue for me to go to school. And I started to improve my grades. And my mother was She said, you should have been doing this the whole time. And I began to try to get into school, improve my grades, my study habits. I had a background, a structure, if you will, from growing up that I didn't realize until once I got into college. I was, again, like I stated before, I was brought up as an only child. And you get bored playing with toys and being by yourself. So I would read, and I would read what was in the house. And I did have older siblings that didn't live there, but I had a sister that left behind books. She was 13 years older than me. So I had novels in elementary school, Ian Fleming, things like that. And I would read them. I was tired of the elementary school books, and I realized that I loved to read. And I started to collect words. Yeah, I was an avid comic book collector as well, but I collect words like I collect the comic books. And I realized it helped me to write and it helped me to speak. So when I put that forward with my education, I began to see improvements. As I stated before, my dad was a jazz musician, so I always had a love for music. He never pressured me into playing an instrument, but once he saw that I had an interest, he guided me towards saxophone, and I ended up playing. And I ended up playing some gigs with him when I could as a sub for some of the young men that couldn't make the gig that night. So both of the things married, education and my music kind of blended together. And coming through school, I didn't come into contact with many male figures. And that's still the plight today, whether it be elementary school, high school, or even junior high. I'm old enough to have gone to junior high, not middle school. And I can count how many men that I actually had contact with, in each of those school levels. So one of my favorite, if not my favorite teacher, was Mr. Elvis Pascal, who also played the tenor sax, an alto when needed in my dad's band, the Billy Rowe Jazz Orchestra. And he was my band director. And he had quite an impression on me, and I wanted to be a band director, and I wanted to have an impression on young men like he did. So that's what led me into music education. Once I got into music education, I was a band director shortly after graduating. I did elementary school for a little while, and then I immediately got a middle school. And I was doing well, enjoying working with the kids, but standardized testing had become very prominent at that time. And in an effort to make sure these kids met the standards and were able to pass a test, they began what we call double dosing. They would pull them out of their elective courses, and they would give them an additional ELA or reading, an additional math, and the kids were losing their electives. And I just remembered, before I decided to try to get into Florida A&M University, which I did get a music scholarship eventually to attend. Only thing I liked in school was the elective. I loved going to band class, and without that motivation, I wasn't interested in school. That is what I look forward to every day. And when I got to a point where I could have a jazz band and a symphonic band, I had 2 periods of it. I'm like, this is heaven. So when I looked at my kids have that taken away, that's when I kind of switched gears, and I decided to try to move into administration, because I felt like from the classroom I couldn't really make any changes. So I thought administratively that would be the route to go.
So, you mentioned that there weren't many male figures as far as school. I guess that means teachers when you was coming along through school. I was just having this conversation with one of my former guests. And what I've noticed is that, that there aren't many, but the ones that are there have been so impactful. And just looking back and thinking about hindsight being 2020, what do you think the impact would have been had there been more male school teachers in your presence at that time?
I think it would have been extremely beneficial to our Black males. The more men that you come into contact with that are successful or present themselves as being successful, it motivates you. I look at my kids now, and I see how I looked at Mr. Pascal Mr. Pratt, I believe, was my science teacher, and he was the first black Jewish man I ever met in my life, and he had an impact on me as well, the way he carried himself. But when I was at Florida A&M in the educational department, my classes, they taught us to carry yourself a certain way, to dress a certain way, even no matter what position you were in. When I first started, as I stated before, I was an elementary school music teacher, and the school was basically an outdoor setting. They had the classrooms were in a little square, but in the middle, it was open air. So you would be in the weather, and it's hot in Miami. So I would be sweating, but I had the shirt and tie, and I've kept that for the last 33 years. And the children look at you a little different. And the boys especially look at you a little different. Even to this day, the kids say, "You always dress well, Dr. Cooper. I could see your shirts from a mile away," because I don't like white dress shirts, because, again, I sweat a lot. So I like colors. And I can see your shoes and your socks always match your shirt. And I ask, leave me alone about my clothes, but I know they're looking. And I know this. I want to be neat. I want to, dress well and look the part. So even from that aspect, I think that would have meant a lot. Seeing someone be successful in the school system lets you believe that you can be successful in the school system as well. Guys that went to college, guys that were in fraternities, things of that nature. I wasn't around many of those men, and I didn't realize anything about fraternities, anything, until I got to college. So it opens your eyes, opens the students' eyes when they see people that look like them doing things that they never thought of, or they even conceived in their mind, and things that are out there that they don't know about. So I think that would have been very beneficial. And that's what I want to impart to my students, so they can go out and do the same thing, come back and give. And I talk about that in my book as well.
So as we move along, I want to say also to the audience, thank you all for being here with us tonight. I'm glad that you all are here, and please enjoy the show. So Dr. Cooper, can you tell us, what was your childhood like growing up, and how did it shape your worldview?
I started out in what was originally called Colored Town in Miami. It's now called Overtown. It's not unlike most urban areas where the interstate ran through the neighborhood and basically destroyed a black thriving neighborhood, and it became something different. And like most black families, or any families, to be quite frank, my family wanted to move to a better part of town, and we end up moving to what is now Miami Gardens. When I came, it was Scott Lake Manor, and it was quite a culture shock. I remember being the only one of two black families on the block. I distinctly remember my mother using Christmas decoration, and our house looked like Las Vegas, and all the neighbors' houses didn't have any lights, and I was quite embarrassed. And that's the first time I ran into racism as well, because at that time we had what is known as white flight. A lot of the white neighbors were moving away because blacks were moving in. I actually got a glimpse of a Klan rally when I was about 8 or 9. And I remember that distinctly because we were riding down the street, Zayre's, which is an old department store. I'm aging myself. Most people may not remember that. But they had a rally with horses and sheets on in the Zayre's parking lot. And we passed by, and I was in the front seat next to my mom. It was just my mom and I. And I tried to slide up under the dashboard because I had seen movies and of that nature and what the Klan could do. So I was afraid. And my mom, I never forget, she said, "Boy, if you don't get up, they're not going to do anything to us." So she was tough and resilient. And that was part of my upbringing. You're not better than anyone, but you're just as good. And if you put forth your best effort, you can be as good or better than the people that you're around if you try. And that was part of my upbringing. I watched the neighborhood change, and it became more black. Actually, when I first got to high school, the high school I went to was 60% white, 40% black. I ended up transferring later on, but it was different, and I learned that different is not bad. I learned some things from the students that were white, and I had some friends. Oop, I lost the earpiece. Excuse me. I had some friends, lifelong friends, and it was quite a different experience. And then I ended up going to a much more urban high school, and that was great as well. So I figured I had the best of both worlds. I spoke about my academics, so I struggled, not because I couldn't do it, because I wasn't motivated. And as I stated before, I became motivated. Uh, I ended up having a child in high school, and that's something else I speak of in my book. And my parents were gracious enough to take care of my son until I got out of Florida A&M University, where I was able to take care of myself. And I was blessed, and I thank God for that. And just a loving family, a family that wants to see people succeed, and they want just as much, if not more, for you than they do for themselves. And I think that's something that I take with me that I got from both my parents.
So, so when you think about that, you see the white flight, you see the KKK rallies, you're like, you're getting ready. You're a young man that's coming to, to learn a whole lot more and be more in the world. Did this have any negative effects on you when you looked at other people for this violent behavior and these actions that you didn't quite understand? Did you ask your parents like what was going on and why was this happening?
Absolutely. I had a difficult time getting my brain around why there was so much hatred for people that hadn't done anything to you. And it drove me not away from white people or any other race, but it drove me to want more contact and more knowledge of my people, and find out, what have we done to deserve this? And I found out nothing. And and it made me to want to go to a HBCU, and it made me not want to treat anyone like that, because there are quite a few different ethnic groups that attended Florida A&M, especially our nursing program. We had a lot of students that were non-black, and as a race, I think we are welcoming to everyone. But I had neighbors that were white, and one of them babysat me, so it wasn't a big thing. But I was confused because that neighbor's brother, he was painting swastikas on the sidewalk, but his sister babysat me. So it was confusing for me in junior high school. But what I learned was, sometimes what you see is not what you get, and that works both ways. If you take that approach, or have a philosophy all the white people are bad, you can't go with that. And if someone's treating you well, oh, then they have my best interest. That's not necessarily true either. So it made me cautious, but it didn't make me fearful or hateful. Is the best way that I can put it.
So when you think about then also and you think about now, how do you teach your students to be better about situations like this and how to handle them?
Well, I think social media pushes a different agenda now, and unfortunately, a lot of the children are getting their cues from that. And social media it could be very toxic. But what I like to say, I haven't really experienced a lot of that from my kids. Either way, they're just little pockets of racism, so I don't have to speak on it much. But when I do, I let them know that basically we're not going to treat a person different because of the way they look, their color, even their religion, their dress, because we don't want to be treated that way, and that's something that's learned. If you didn't know that person's color or what have you, and you know what that person's about, their character, you would still be friends with them. If you're judging them just by that, then you have the issue. But I don't have to deal with it that much. Our kids are welcoming. The school that I work at now is maybe 97% black, and we have maybe 1% white, 2% Hispanic, and everybody's the same. They treat each other the same. I've had a few pockets of it, and I've taught across all grade levels, and I've mostly been in urban schools. I've been in alternative schools, but I have been in some schools that have quite a different demographic. Some schools that really had high tax brackets. I would just say, and, kids are kids, and I didn't really see it there either, because I just think children are children, and most of what they are receiving that's discriminatory or racist they get from the parents, or they get it from social media. You know? Again, I just believe black folks, we're just more welcoming and forgiving. So, my kids, most of my career has been with kids that look like you and I, and they just don't react like that normally. The majority of them, it's very few. It's an anomaly when you have that, and it's usually retaliatory. Somebody said something to them.
So, when did you first realize education would become your life's calling?
Like I said before, Mr. Pascal is my band director, Elvis Pascal. He motivated me to become a band director. And once I got in that seat, there's nothing like the feeling of getting a kid that has never made a sound on the instrument when he comes to you, and when they leave, they're playing well. They're able, the look on their faces at what they've accomplished. I've had students earn scholarships and become section leaders and some of the best musicians at Florida A&M. So once I started teaching, immediately I was like, I'm in the right place. And it was so rewarding. Different concerts and marching and parades, the glee on the students' faces. And when they come back, or they see you years later, or if I see them in the band in college, the look on their faces, and you started this, Dr. Cooper, you helped me, or Mr. Cooper, if it wasn't because of you. So that really made me stay. But Mr. Pascal, that black male representation, even the way he dressed, I remember him in his dress pants and hard bottom shoes and button up shirt. He motivated me to want to be an educator, and I wanted to have that impression on the kids that I came in contact with. I wanted some kids to say, hey, I want to be like Mr. Cooper, and I want to go that route. And I didn't realize that I wanted to do that until I met him. And once I started doing it, I said, hey, man, this is a place for me to be. And then again, the only reason I left is because the kids were being taken out of the program, and that kind of pushed me towards administration.
So, what values did your mother instill in you that still guide your leadership today?
Oh man, my mother was a resilient woman, and she taught me to be resilient, and to believe in yourself, and to not give up. I once I went the avenue of administration, I got as far as assistant principal, and I was a temporary assistant principal, and I was told, hey, you're going to get a permanent position, and that's been a while ago. That's been like 13 years ago. My mom passed about 10 years ago. Yes, thank you. But I remember her telling me, you can't be upset and depressed about not getting the position you want. She said, in the position that you're in, do the best you can with that, and be the best you can with that. And I took that as, wherever you are, be there. So I was in the position I was in, do the best and do wonderful things from that perspective, and be who you are. So I got that from her more than anything. Wherever you are, be there, be all in, and be who you are, be genuine. Do not change, to try to get a position, like, be genuine. And that's something that she instilled in me. And I use that to this day, because I want to be honest. If you have a request for a child, and right now Medina discipline, So I see a lot of my kids at their worst moments. And if you have a request for them, they really don't have an inclination to grant their request unless they know you care. And you have to be genuine in order for them to know that you care. So I found that if I'm genuine with a child, and that's any human being, not only children, if you're genuine, sometimes that involves just listening, especially with our kids. They want to be heard. Even if they're rambling, I let them talk. And I'm genuine and intentional with how I respond to them. Uh, that goes a long way. Then you can get, most likely, not all the time, the response that you want or your request granted. So I want to be totally committed to where I am and what I'm doing, all in. And I want to be genuine. I want to be exactly who I am with the kids. Because children have that meter. They can figure out if you're giving them a story or if you really care, and it goes a long way.
You know, all the educators that's come here have said that exact same thing. They said the kids know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What lessons from your father continue to influence your approach to discipline and structure?
My father, oddly enough, was not the disciplinarian my mom was. And it's a funny story. Uh, my mom, if she got upset, she could have had a PhD in profanity. She might be one of the best cursors I ever met in my life. So I as a young man, I picked up on that. And I had that in my back pocket, if you will. And I remember walking our family dog. And I came home and I said, Mom, the neighbor down the street cursed me. He said some this, that, and if you don't get off and that dog can't. I said, Mom, I didn't say anything back because it's disrespectful, to cuss an adult. My mom said, if he cusses you again, you give him everything that he gave you. So maybe a day later, he cursed me, and I gave him everything that I had heard my mom say. And when I was done, he was walking behind me to come to my house to speak to my father. And I never forget, my father opened the door, and Mr. Jake told him, your son said X, Y, Z. And my dad looked, and he said, unfortunately, he gets that from his mother. Say, I don't curse because I know he curses, and I know my wife curses, and they curse enough for everybody. I don't have to say a thing. So he taught me grace. I never heard my dad say anything but damn. And no matter what situation he was in, no matter how upset he got. And I always strive to have that calm and coolness, which I struggle with today. But he taught me grace, and he never spanked me. But I had so much reverence for him and respect. If I disappointed him, and he would say, you disappoint me, that would break me all the way down. And my mom was the one that doled out the punishment, and I was fearful. But, not that I wanted to disappoint her. It didn't hit the same with my dad when he told me he was disappointed. Whatever I did at that juncture, I didn't do that again because the look in his face. And he was a big guy. I have a little size on me, but he was bigger than me. He's about 6'2" or more. And, but he was a gentle giant. I wasn't afraid of him. I never wanted to let him down. So he taught me grace. He said something to me when I was a young adult. And I was complaining that, I always say good morning. If I walk past you, if I don't know you, I'm going to say good morning. And I came home and I told him, I say good morning at work. And these people, some of them don't say good morning. So I'm never saying good morning to them again, ever in my life. And he said, why would you do that? You did what you're supposed to do. If they didn't reciprocate, if they didn't say good morning, that's on them. Continue doing what you're supposed to do. And it took me a while. I was like, man, I'm not. And I understand grace. And that's another thing I talk about, in my book. You got to have grace and patience. Those two things I get from my dad, which it's a constant work in progress. Being in the education system over 30 years, going on my 34th, you learn to have patience, but your patience gets tried, But grace is something that I really got from my dad, and both my sons, youngest, and oldest, they both have grace, and I love that about it, and I impart that from my father.
Oh Lord, well I tell you, they good. Cause I don't know if I got grace enough. That's all. There's a lot of pending situations. I'm sorry, I got to be like your mama. I got to let you know.
Hey, I'm telling you, it's a work in progress. I'm
Yeah.
It's a lot of my mom in me, and it's and sprinklings of my dad. But excuse me, I see a lot of my dad and my two sons, and unfortunately, a lot of my mom and my daughter. My mom and myself, my daughter's like that, but then she regrets it at the end and cries, and I'm like, my mom and I, we go off, but we never cried at the end. So I guess
Okay.
a small portion of my dad that she has in her.
How did Malcolm X become one of the most influential figures in your life?
Oh my goodness. Uh, I guess because of my personality, I was a fiery guy and short tempered coming up. I was bullied early, and once I learned how to defend myself after many losses, then I was that firecracker. And I kind of, when looking at the civil rights movement, I was drawn more to Malcolm than to Martin because I always believed, Malcolm was the guy that wasn't so much for peace. It was, I'm not turning the other cheek. I'm going to, by any means necessary, I'm going to protect myself. I'm not going to allow you to belittle me. But when I read his autobiography, I realized that wasn't the case with him. That may be how he started, but that's not where he was before his unfortunate death. So it impacted me in the process of learning better. He learned some things, and he thought that was the end all to be all. Elijah Muhammad, and once he made his voyage to the Mecca, he realized things were different, and he was willing to change and to adjust, and that is in partnership with being a lifelong learner. I think we make a grave mistake when we think that once we finish school, the learning is over. Life teaches you lessons throughout. I've had people say, once your child graduates from school and you're done raising them, no, they still need to learn and you still need to teach because life is going to teach them lessons and they're not going to be as gracious. It's tough out there. So you never stop learning. And I think I got that more so from his autobiography, which I read maybe 3 or 4 times while I was in school. And it started out, oddly enough, I was waiting for a ride, and I'm very impatient now. I'm working on that grace. And I'm sitting out on the grass like, man, this guy's never going to pick me up. And I just started reading it. And I couldn't put it down. And, for years, I just would read. Anytime I had to wait, I just read it again. But the fact that he was able to change his views and understand, hey, this wasn't correct, and I need to adjust. And that's okay. Especially in our society right now, the climate right now, you have leaders that double down when they make mistakes. And this guy, he made a mistake, following someone who wasn't what he thought he was, and he adjusted. And I think that's how you should go through life. It's not about making mistakes. Everyone needs to make mistakes because that's how you learn. It's what you do after you make a mistake. Do you adjust to be better, or do you continue to make that mistake, or do you double down or even lie about the mistake? And he was forthright. So that's why he impacted me more so than anything. And he didn't initially. Initially, I was just going with him because I thought he was the tougher of the two. But I learned a lot by reading that autobiography at least 3 or 4 times.
Did you read the Alex Haley version?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I read the first interview in the Playboy magazine. And I went back and read that. And as a young boy, I didn't read the articles in the Playboy magazine. I didn't even know what the articles in there, but I researched that. And I went and read that one too. Because that's the first interview I believe he had with Malcolm in Playboy magazine.
Yeah, you're so right. And that particular, because somebody else tried to write one after Alex, that of course
No,
it
didn't pick up traction. No, it doesn't hit the same. Not at all.
Right. What parallels do you see between Malcolm's philosophy and your work in schools?
Just what I stated a few moments ago. Uh, a lot of time, district policies are not realistic because I believe the people that are making these policies either they weren't in schools teaching at our level long enough, or they've forgotten. But a lot of these mandates that come down, they're not beneficial and they're not helpful to what we're trying to accomplish in the school system. So I parallel that with Malcolm's first teachings from Elijah Muhammad. He thought that was the way to do it, but it was not. So you have to walk a fine line and be able to satisfy the district, but at the same time, you have to do what's best for your kids. And what's best at one school may not be best at another school because it depends on the demographics, the needs of the children, academically, socioeconomically. So you have to be able to travail those waters as Malcolm did. You know, I got this agenda that I need to follow, but it's not right. I'm just not going to blindly follow that to the detriment of my students. And he did that as far as his religion. I'm not going to follow this to self-detriment. I'm going to find out the real essence of what I'm supposed to do, and I'm going to follow that. And he was willing to change and adapt. And you have to do that in the school system. There are a lot of leaders, and we have ridiculous mandates and policies handed down, and they go right with it. We got to do that. And I'm like, hey, but that makes no sense. But hey, I have to meet. I understand that. But what you have to do is be able to adapt, because you'll lose a lot of your staff if you don't. And the district's not working with your staff. You know, you are. And they need to, know that you have their best interests in mind. So that to me is one of the best parallels, between Malcolm and what I see in the school system.
So I've got a comment here that's in the chat that I would love for you to reply to. This is by, I don't know how to pronounce your first name, Walker, but I'm just going to say C. Walker. It says, I agree that Black people and children are very welcoming, but racist white people kids are indignated to believe what it is their parents have invented in them. I grew up in a sundown town, and people who I thought were my friends in elementary school was not my friends, and it was shown to me by them in elementary school. Even the teachers were not of quality, but quantity, because they too supported the systems in place that was always there to validate racist belief systems.
Well, that's a lot to unpack. I do believe that that's an issue. And it's become more of an issue with the leadership that we have now. And I've heard, and I'm very supportive. I want to deal with the races that I know that shows me from the gate, because the ones that are veiled, they're much more dangerous. But I on this in my book, in the education chapter, because the education chapter does not just encapsulate training, certification, going to school. It's education for us as Black people in America, as far as how we travail these different obstacles placed in front of us with the situation that person is speaking of, how we speak, how we name our kids, as far as being able to have resumes being taken seriously, how we deal with law enforcement, and all these things are unfortunate that we have to bend over backwards, but they're necessary. I speak. We have to do to come home alive, especially our Black boys, and because there are a lot of things out there that are set up for us to fail and to not come home. So I speak on how to have your registration, your license nearby, maybe in the middle console, how to respond when the police pull you over, and to let's take the stigma off what they call code switching. You're speaking like a white man. No, that's one way to speak English. And the English doesn't have a color on it. You're either speaking it correctly or you're not. And when people say they don't code switch, they're lying. I don't speak the same at home as I do when I'm working. I don't speak to my students the same way I speak to my child, even though all of my children are adults. But these are things that we have to get away from, the stigmatism of that. But He or she. I didn't get the first name. I can't recall. But Walker is correct. I didn't experience the sundown town. I experienced some of that in my travels when I was in a band at Florida A&M, and we would go through towns and things of that nature. But I never really experienced that where I was living, and when I was in school at Florida A&M, it was a cocoon type atmosphere. When I went looking for a job, I did experience that. I was far off campus, and that kind of led me to say that you need to stay behind over here on FAMU side of town, because I did experience a lady basically used the N word while I was right there waiting to be interviewed, and I was
Wow.
it was a private social club, and I was waiting to be seen. I caught the bus out there, and I walked a while on the little clay road to get to it, but I needed a job, and I had bartending certification. I bartended in Miami a little bit, so I said, "Well, I'll do this at school." And while I was sitting there, they were talking about, and it just so happened to be my high school, and the mascot is the Red Raiders, and they were saying, "Yeah, they call them the Black Raiders now, all the niggers that go there." And I was like, "Whoa." I'm sitting right here. I'm sitting right. I didn't say that, but I said, okay, I'm sitting right here, and they don't care. I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do this interview. And I can't remember if I left before the interview, but I know I got out of there quickly, and that kind of cemented that racism was still alive and well, because I had become accustomed to just being around black folks at FAMU. I stayed on that side of town, and those people they took care of me. It was family. But yeah, it's still out there, and unfortunately, with our leadership, it's being pushed and propagated by folks to the kids, and it's a lesson that's taught, and it's hard to unteach. It's easy to destroy. It's hard to build up. Very difficult.
You know, before I move on, what she meant, he or she mentioned, I just know C. Walker. I just want to say that I just like yourself. I've never experienced a sundown town, but I knew what they were, and a lot of times in my travels, I knew where they were. And so if I had to go through places like that, I always made sure this
Avoid.
my right hand to God. I made sure I got through those places because I know them people don't know me from Adam's house cat. They hate me. And if I was to stop in a place like that, there's no telling what I would experience. But I think what makes this so prominent today that it still goes on is that there are a lot of people, especially those that look like you and I, that have not experienced that. But when some people that experience that and they mention it, you have people that harp on this like, oh, you're just saying this, you're just using this, you're trying to create this, that, and the other, which means they're like totally not thinking about or caring at least at all about these people's experience, and they're like just disregarding it. And so I think when we start doing that, especially to each other, when we do the devaluation, this thing kind of like continues in so many different ways that it spreads more like a cancer than we believe, because the tentacles just start taking off, and people find themselves doing it all the time. And a lot of times, just like the folk that are leading the country today, they start sounding just like those folk, unbeknownst to them, that it's like, oh, it's just should be this way and this is the way it is. But we all have to be empathetic and sympathetic for everybody, because if we don't know that experience, we can't speak on it like that. But I kind of hate to hear that that whomever Walker is had to go through something like that. And when you're in a sundown town, I can just imagine what life was like. I can just imagine, because that could not have been anything good at all.
I was a fan of rapper Lil Wayne. I love his delivery and his wordplay. Uh, I had to back away from him because I remember in the midst of Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd incident, he was interviewed and they asked him about that, and he said he doesn't support Black Lives Matter because his experience, and his experience, a white man saved his life. And I just remember saying how insensitive that was, because your experience is not everyone's experience. And then you cannot generalize and say, well, it's not like that for everyone because it's not like that for me. That's an individualized experience, and you have to respect others. And for him to say that, it just threw me. And I love him as an artist, but I just I couldn't listen to him anymore after that because of what you just said. And once you water it down, and it hurts us as a people when you do that. You know, if one black man is discriminated against, or anybody in the LGBT, I can't say all the letters, community, I always say the next one is me. I can't be discriminatory against anyone because there goes me. And if you're not looking out for everyone, then you're going to become that person that you've been, discriminated against at some point.
And that is, she just put in the chat, is Mrs. Walker.
Mrs. Walker, okay.
So let's move over to you becoming an educator. What drew you to music education as your entry point into teaching?
Both my dad, well, mostly my dad. I watched him carry his bass, and he'd come home from work at about 6, and he'll be off about 7:30. And I remember asking him, man, you don't get sleepy? And I remember him always saying, I never get sleepy, son. I get tired, but I don't get sleepy, which all my life I believed. And then I realized he was just telling me something to get me to stop worrying about him. I'm like, what? You can't be tired and not. But he played and he did that with so much joy. And once I began playing, especially when I got to high school, I began to have a love for it in junior high school. And you get around like-minded kids that want to play music. You make lifelong friends. But once I got in high school, and I was in jazz band in high school, and I was able to play solos, I began arranging music. And then saxophone players, we're a different breed. A lot of times they talk about percussion players, saxophone players, they're a whole different breed. And my dad's 14-piece jazz orchestra that he played in, the saxophone players would be absent more than any other section. So they had a need for subs. So I had to try out. I remember playing Harlem Nocturne in Coconut Grove for Billy Rose, a legend in Miami and in Coconut Grove. And he said, okay, we're going to use you whenever the saxophone players can't make a gig. And most musicians will tell you the best thing that you can have is a gig that's like a regular job, because gigs most of the time are far and in between. And my dad had a gig that ran for maybe 5-6 years at minimum, 5-6 nights a week. So it was like a regular job. So when I went and played, and everybody on that stage could be my dad, and I was playing the audience, and I was even more in love. And I say, hey, this is something I want to do. And a lot of the guys that were on the bandstand were band directors. So I was around what would become my peers. And my dad, I found out once I did graduate from Florida A&M that he couldn't read music. My dad played everything by ear. So he had hundreds of tunes in his head, and he was a vocalist. And the bass line, I'm gonna get in my music bag for a moment. The bass line is far removed from the melody, and I never understood a percussionist or a drummer and a bass player singing the vocals always threw me, because what they're doing musically is so far removed from what they're singing. Piano players, yeah, I can go with that. You're playing a melody, counter melody, what have you. But my dad had all these lyrics and all these tunes in his head. And I was amazed when he told me that. And I remember him telling me that. I thought when he told me, it was almost sheepishly like, I can't read. And he asked me to teach him how to read. And I taught him how to read music. And my dad was, mid-60s when I taught him that. And he adversely taught me some things, conversely, I should say. He taught me some things on the bass. And he left us soon after. I think my dad passed in 95. But that's what got me into education. And when I started arranging music, because when I came up, the bands were getting music from different companies and publishers, and they would always be like a year behind. So what was popular right then, we would play it a year later. So I wanted to play what was on the radio then. So I started listening, learn how to play it, and then I would write it, arrange it, and then I would give it to Mr. Pascal, and he was gracious enough to allow the band to play it. He didn't have an ego, and he's like, go ahead, Cooper, teach him, conduct the band. I was like, wow, this is something that I could do. And it motivated me, man, and made me want to become an educator. And again, once I got in, I wanted to change things from a different perspective. And now, I do more with the discipline, and I talk to these kids, and I gain their trust, and that helps me with other fires, preventing them, because they feel comfortable talking to me because I'm genuine with them. They say, you keep it a buck, Doc. I said, okay, but I don't have a buck for you, but I guess I keep it a buck. That means I keep it 100. You're being real with me. So I said, okay, I'll do that. But that's what drew me. And once I got in, I found my niche. You know what I'm saying? You be genuine, you upfront with the kids, and you care for them. And I will say, I've been doing this since my 33rd year. I saw something on social media when they were talking about, making sure teachers are okay and educators. They say, you have kids that come to you with their problems, and they're with you, maybe 3 years, 4 years, and then they leave. Either they graduate or they leave from middle school to high school, and you don't see those kids again for the rest of your life. And you say, those relationships you build with them, and they're gone. And at some point, you start to feel sad that there's a possibility, and more so than not, that I'm never going to see that individual again. And this year, for some reason, I had that feeling because I had about maybe 13 kids that would come to me at some point of the day during the week, maybe 2-3 times a week. And I realized maybe half of those kids I'm never going to see again. They may go across the street to the high school, but many of them I'm not going to see again. And I felt a little sad because they talked to me about, their mornings, what their mom did. My sister was so mean to me, and I just let them talk most of the time. And then if they ask for advice, I got that from my dad too. Wait till they ask, and then I would tell them. And this is what I was the right thing, but and how do you feel about it? And I realized I'm going to miss those talks. I'm going to miss it. But the next year you get a new batch, but you never forget, those connections you made with those kids. So that's why it's really fulfilling when you see them as adults and they come and talk to you. I remember you, Doc, and yeah, you getting so old. Thank you. I appreciate that part. Thank you. But yeah, it's rewarding in that respect.
So how did being a band director influence your understanding of discipline and teamwork?
Oh, that is an amazing question. I like to compare being a band director with being a coach. And I really love football, basketball as well, but football is my primary. And you have different sides of the ball: defense, offense, special teams, and within those sides of the ball, you even have more subdivision. You got your offensive line, your backs, your receivers. So I say that to say, in the band, you have different sections. So I treated it as the same way as a coach would. So when you practice, you don't have your receivers and your offensive linemen doing the same thing. So have your woodwinds over here, you have your brass over here, percussion, and you have your different components, your different pieces practicing. Okay, but you have to oversee all of that, and you have to go in and you're your own offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. I got to go work with the woodwinds, the brass, and you have to teach them to basically be accountable, and you find the leader in that group, and they help you be able to work those sections. And once they work, then you can come back together as a whole, and you can rehearse. Because I was always taught you don't practice when you come to the band room. You rehearse. You practice at home, and that takes discipline. If you come to the band room to practice, you're wasting my time. when I rehearse, we're trying to put everything together from all these different, from the offensive line, defense line, all these different instrumental groups, and we're trying to make it fit. And I'm just dealing with the nuances. The what's going on with my lighting? We're dealing with the crescendos, the dynamics, if you will. But that to me is just like coaching, and it drives with leadership. You have to be a leader. You have to show the kids that you know something about all the different sections. Just I think as a football coach, you got to know about all the different sides of the ball, and you have to be disciplined in your approach, and you have to have people that's in those different sections that are able to lead. You have to be able to delegate, and that is my approach with education. I think a lot of leaders lose that aspect of it with delegation. They want to do it all, and no one can do it all. I was a saxophone player. I know all of the instruments, but I don't know how to play all of them as well as I do the saxophone. So if I had a trumpet player that was great, I'm going to let him do his thing and teach those, students that play the trumpet. And I think in the school system, you have a great math teacher, a science teacher, then you have to allow that person to be a leader and be great and help your building, help your school. And a lot of times we don't do that. When I say we, I'm talking about the leaders because they want to do it all. And on the flip side of that, you can't have those people helping and leading, and then you don't appreciate them, and then you don't reward them as well. And I think that's a great part of leadership. I think the best administrators or leaders are band directors, and I'm biased, and coaches, because they know how to delegate, they know how to break groups down and have them work individually and then come back together in a team effort to become successful. They have more experience in that than I think any other positions at the school. So I think that was beneficial to me.
Well, here's another hello here in the chat. This is from Anthony McGrew. Hello, Anthony. Thanks for joining the show. We're glad that you're here. What did you learn from working across elementary, middle and high school and alternative settings? What did you learn from all those different settings?
Well, I learned that middle school has the most development going on out of all four levels, because they're developing physically, intellectually, emotionally. So you have a lot going on in middle school, and you have to be cognizant of that, because those kids are 21 at 12 o'clock and 6 years old at 12:15. They could switch on a dime. So you have to be cognizant of that, and your approach has to be different. Dealing with elementary school, it was more nurturing, in my experience, and I was in a situation where there weren't enough classes for me, so I had to do kindergarten and first grade, and whoa, that's something unto itself, dealing with those babies. So I was able to adapt and change my lesson, because you're not really, not that you can't, but you're not really doing a lot. I guess with teaching them how to read music at that age, it was one, making music fun, and sneakingly teaching them, some things about music. But it had to be fun for kindergarten and first grade, or you'll lose the whole class. And kindergarten and first grade, that was their teachers' planning. And they in our district, they don't get planning like that. Their planning was PE. So those teachers would be gone. So I would be in there with a bunch of 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, and it scared me to death the first time I did that. But it's much more nurturing, and I realized that, and all across all grade levels, your time needs to be spent productively, because when you have idle time, that's when you can lose control of your class and bad things happen. But especially in elementary school. So you have to be prepared, and you have to have that fun factor, because you have adults that can't sit still 15 minutes or 20 minutes. I'm one of them. I mean, I'm proud of myself right now, being able to sit this long. So I realized you have to be on the move with those kids, and it's much more nurturing. I understand, or I learned with middle school, you're dealing with some kids that have some real issues going on because they're still developing. High school, I loved it. It was fast moving for me. I was doing the morning announcements. I was the activities director. I announced the football game halftime. I did the prom and graduation. I loved it. It was a lot of work. That was my favorite grade level to work with. Some of the kids are they're a little challenging, but once they realize you have their best interest in mind, you can work with them. Uh, and some of them are lost and they're just afraid to share that they're lost and they need help. Alternative ed, uh, to me, was very close to my middle school experience, oddly enough, especially my first year, really doing Dean of Discipline in middle school. But alternative ed, a lot of the kids, they're not unlike our people in society that get incarcerated. Oftentimes they come out worse than they went in, because they have this preconceived notion, I need to be this guy or this woman. And I think the worst thing they did with alternative ed was have those kids return to the school that sent them to us to begin with, because now they have this persona, and kids, when they come back, oh, such and such, oh, remember he was crazy. Teachers already have this perception of you, and it's not a good thing. I think a brand new start, it will be best for those kids. But I learned there more so than anything, you have to give those kids a chance. All those kids were not what they were made out to be. A lot of it was, I want them out of my school. So every little thing that they do, I'm going to document, and I'm going to send them to alternative ed. And when the alternative education school that I was working at, every referral that was submitted, that was another 9 weeks. So you might have been sent to us maybe for a year or 2 semesters, and then you got in trouble there. You're picking up more time, and that was disappointing as well. And when I got there, it was a middle school. Traditionally, it was a middle school co-ed, and then it changed to a all-female middle school. Then it changed to an all-female 6 through 12, which I didn't really support that, because I didn't think you need to have that varying age group together in an alternative setting, because you potentially have a 12-year-old in contact with a 17, 18-year-old, and some awful things can happen. Then it went back to being co-ed, so now it's 6 to 12 co-ed now. But I learned that those kids, that don't judge a book by its cover. I had a boy there that he was there because he was being sexually active on the staircase, and yeah, that's horrible. And but he was there, and he was, in contact with kids that were there for cutting other kids or having guns, and that really wasn't a place for him, you know. And I took a liking to him. He was able to go back to a school, but you had those type of situations, and I learned you can't put them all in one basket and treat them all the same, because it's not. And all of them have an opportunity to change and go back. And a lot of their issues stem from not being able to do the classwork too. Not all of them, but a lot of them, they were acting out because they couldn't do their classwork. So that was the avenue. I can't do this. So before I get embarrassed, I'm going to show off. And that wasn't investigated enough. I think it was just easier to get them out of your school, and then they don't, negatively affect your test scores as well.
So, what was the biggest misconception people had about teaching?
Oof. For me, and I think I could say for the majority of folks, the classroom management component of it. People think you're going to come in and you're just going to teach. No, it's a lot more to that. You have to be able to, have that class. And I don't like the control. I don't want to say control. I don't even like the term management. I rather use creating and cultivating. You have to create an environment where desired behaviors are cultivated and created, and you have to be able to do that from the start. And if you can't do that, you can't teach that lesson. The kids are not going to let you do that. And I don't think that's taught enough in colleges and in educational programs when they're training these teachers. Um, if you do an intern, depends on where you go. I did an intern at a predominantly white school. Not to say that there's a big difference, but the behavior there was a little different. I was in a rural area. I was in Tallahassee. That doesn't compare to what I was going to experience when I got to Miami, urban school and a different demographic. So the thought that you will come in and teach and you don't have to deal with that other stuff. You're a part-time counselor. You have to deal with that a lot, especially if you're secondary, and you have to have good classroom management. And then you can focus on teaching your class, and you have to have mastery of your subject area. The kids, the meter that they have for BS and determining if you're genuine is the same meter that they have if you don't know your subject area. If they have an inclination that you don't know what you're teaching, oh, it's an issue. And you cannot get into this profession if you're trying to make a lot of money. That's not going to happen. This is not one of those professions that, and it is a profession. I know, at least in the state of Florida, they've taken it off the list of professions, but it's not one if you're chasing wealth. But it is rewarding, and you have to be all in. You can't be in it with one foot out the door. I'm only going to do this for 5 years, because that's going to come across in your teaching and your commitment to the kids. So that classroom management component, and also you're going to have to do some counseling. It can't just be teaching. Again, the kids have to know that you care. So sometimes you have to ask questions. You have to know to ask the right questions. The professional way. What's wrong? Why are you so sad today? A kid has his head down. I'm snapping because they're not doing their work. No, you want to find out why. It could be some things going on at home. They haven't eaten, and you have to be compassionate about it. And it's hard for people to be compassionate. They have 1 foot in the classroom, 1 foot out the door. So those things, I think, are real misconceptions. I don't think the money is. I think everybody knows it's not a rich man's race doing that. But yeah, the classroom management component and being caring and genuine and there for the kids, you have to do that.
So what kept you committed to education for more than 30 years?
I think the possibility and the potential for me to have an impact on at least one kid, other than the kids that I raised in my household. It's nothing like having a sibling come back and talk to me and say, yeah, my brother and sister had you, or even parents. And to be honest, I remember the first time a parent came to me and said, oh, I remember you taught me. I was like, wow, I've been at this for a long time. But and I was like, wow, this is crazy. But for them to tell me that and to say, hey, I know they're in good hands because of the way you taught me. And I've had some kids who are they're adults now. I remember what you told me when I was getting ready to graduate about being yourself. And, when I went to college, don't dress like everybody else and continue to be your own person and, be unique. I remember that. And when I got to school, that helped me a lot. So that kept me going. And, I like to talk about light bulbs. I talk about that in my book. I believe everyone has a light bulb. And I believe everyone's light bulb, it flickers at some point. I believe my goal is to help you illuminate that light bulb. And I had to come to grips with, and I think anybody that's in education or mentors that have to come to grips with, that light bulb may not come on while you are around them or in their presence. It may come on after they leave you. Maybe they graduate high school. Maybe they get promoted from middle school to high school when that light bulb comes on. So you can't be discouraged if it doesn't come on while they're with you. You have to believe and hope that it comes on at some point. And if it's a year, 2 years, 5, 10 years from now, I say, hey, I remember Dr. Such and Such or Mr. Such and Such told me this, and I should do it this way. And that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me going. I'm not tired, and I'm not sick. My mom and dad, I'm not sick and tired. I'm not tired yet, so I'm gonna keep going. I got a few more years left in me.
Well, that's a great thing. But let me ask you this, because in just thinking about, you've had this illustrious career that's still going, and how it actually just grew like that, where it was on a constant incline. What was your motivation? What made you feel so loving and so committed to making education what it is at this point?
I think I, I owe it to my students because of what I received uh, coming up. Neither one of my parents went to college, but they were adamant that I went. And as I stated before, I wasn't around a lot of black male teachers, but the few that I had contact with had a uh, very influential impact on me. And I want to be able to do that as well. I want to have that impact on students and be able to be someone that they aspire to be or be better than, hopefully. And basically pass little nuggets on. And I like to say, pay it forward. That's another thing I speak about in my book, and that encompasses grace as well. All of these black boys and black girls too. I don't want to put them aside, but I think black women and black girls are the strongest beings on earth, and they overcome so much. And I think our black boys, we struggle much more than they do. And I think they have more obstacles in front of them than we do. So that's why I want to reach out to our black boys. But we owe them. I think everybody owes them. Every black man owes every little black boy. That's why I say grace and paying it forward and giving some advice when needed. Just listening to a little boy, or a young man. That goes a long way. I was speaking to a gentleman a day or so ago, and I was telling him, he asked about why did I want to write the book, and I told him, it was something that was on my mind. I have been seeing, parents that come to me and say, well, such and such acts like this because his dad's not in his life. And I heard it so many times, and I said, well, we can't use that as a crutch. We got to do something to, help these kids out. And the first thing, as I said before, is we got to mentor them. We have to show grace. We have to talk to them. But that's what made me want to write the book, The Black Man Manual, uh, to give some type of guidelines for success, immediate and long term. What I speak about in the book, it talks about real world issues in real time, things that we're dealing with. So this is something that's on my heart. It's something that I think needs to take place. And if we as black men all take that approach with these young black men and take time to listen and actually mentor and give some encouragement and advice, just things from our life experiences, it will go a long way. And I speak on family, I speak on relationships. It's very imperative that you know, are very careful who you have these children with, and you're not, going to spend the rest of your lives with them. That's something we got to take very seriously. And I speak from experience because I had a child when I was, in 11th grade. 11th grade. So I know that. I talk about education, and it's not just certification training or going to a university. I'm educating yourselves about travailing America that we're in right now and the climate that it's in. I talk about uh, the finances, being able to have knowledge of your finances and protecting your finances. And I also talk about social media and how we need to use that as a tool instead of just bragging or showing off. In my experiences, a lot of issues that come about discipline wise have been social media beefs or seeing something on social media and I want to imitate that and a trend, things of that nature. And I say in my book, everybody when you get on social media just to brag and show off, you have to keep in mind there's always somebody better, and there's always going to be somebody that's bitter. And that bitter piece comes back to haunt a lot of us because now we have a problem. You didn't like, I don't like what you said. It doesn't matter. The people that love you in your household and your family, that's who you need to be concerned about, not random people on social media. And I think we need to get away from that. And that's difficult because that genie is out of the bottle because everybody has access to it. My grandchildren, 7, 3, and 1, all of them are they have these different apps and stuff that they're on, and they're they cling to them. So we have generations of kids that have grown up with social media and these apps, so it's hard to get them away. But we have to really be vigilant in what they watch and what they're consuming and how they're reacting to it. And that's why I wanted to put this book out. And it's not a long read because if you look at any manual, I know from my experience, if I look at a manual and it's that thick, I'm like, oh God, I'm not gonna be able to. That's a lot. So it's very readable and it's something that it can be used immediately in what's going on in your life. And it's something to help our single mothers out as well. And I also wanted to put my time into my educational consultant company, Posit DJC Educational Consultants, to actually mentor on a broader spectrum, also assist students in getting into college and into grad school as well. And my wife, she handles the tutoring component of it. So we've been doing, small things. You don't have to pay me. We'll work it out. And I said, well, let's expand and try to do more. Again, it's not about money. This is not a wealthy, chasing wealth endeavor, but it's about, giving back and helping our youth. And I use D, J, and C because those are my kids' names: Derwin, Josie, and Coop, my oldest. So I use those letters. But those are the things that I'm trying to delve into to give back. And I also have a couple of books that are coming out next month. One is the Dean of Discipline Handbook, a guide to creating and cultivating desired behaviors in the classroom, school, and beyond. And I also have a book of poetry that I wrote. I've been married 26 years in about 2 weeks, and we've been together 29. But about 20 years ago, I felt that it was a little growth or growing apart, and I wrote my wife a poem every day for a year. And I didn't realize I did that, and she kept it. She kept all of them, and she handed them to me maybe about 3 or 4 months ago, and she said, you should think about publishing these. So I did just that. So these are things that are keeping me full, because I'm under the belief that you should die empty. When I say empty, anything creative that you have in you, you need to get it out. And don't go on that long sleep and you still have things that you could have done and you didn't do them. And that's where I am right now in my life.
Speaking of Posit DJC Education and Consultants LLC, that is where we're going next. And what I first want to ask you about that is, what inspired you to create it?
Well, it started off as tutoring, and my wife does that. And I said, this could be a tool for me to do more mentoring. And I wanted to also guide students to go into school if that's their wish. And I know once I graduated from Florida A&M, that was the hardest thing that I ever because I wasn't focused the whole time. As I said before, my light bulb was flickering, and it took me a while for it to illuminate completely. And once it did, I had no desire to go to grad school. My dad, right before he passed, he asked me, "Son, why don't you go back to school?" And I said, "Dad, you don't know how long. You remember how long it took me to get out the first time?" But I realized that he said, "Hey, man, you need to what you want to do requires this." And I look back at it and I say, maybe at that time I wasn't quite ready to do what he asked me to do. It all came at the right time. But I want to assist kids in getting into grad school as well, because sometimes it looks as if it's daunting, and it's really not. And that goes to admission letters and requirements and things that you need to do to prepare yourself for, admissions into those programs. And now, fortunately, you have a lot of online things where you don't have to leave, your city to get in some of these programs. And I want to be able to assist the kids in that respect, in that regard. And some of them don't have access to the information. During my experience, I realized that, in the affluent schools, excuse me, the access to different scholarships and the different programs are much more plentiful most of the times than in our schools. And I wanted to be able to assist in that area. We oftentimes we only get a small list of scholarships and what have you. And I was at some affluent schools in Miami, and they have a scholarship for everything. And hey, try this one, try that one, and we don't utilize that. And that's another thing I talk about, in my book. Sporting events. I'm an avid sports fan. What I look at is that our Optimist, which is our little league in South Florida, you can pass one of those parks and you see hundreds and hundreds of people out there, parents and what have you. But if you pass by a PTA meeting, it's not like that at all. And what I found also is, as you move from primary to secondary, the interest is not the same. I know they're babies in elementary school and they need us, but we need that same ferocity with middle school. We need to be there and we need to support them. I need those PTA meetings to be filled up like the Optimist Park. I remember we were offering pizza and spaghetti to get you to come to PTA meetings. You go to the Optimist games and then you buying food from the food truck. You're spending money. But we want you to come in and support their education and support the school as much as you are supporting these sporting events. And if we did that, I think we'll have, much more kids trying to go the route of college and grad school. And if you don't want to go that route, that's fine too. We need certifications, license, and things of that nature. That's fine, but we need to support academically the way we support these teams. I can tell you the offensive line, and I can tell you stats, but I can also tell you what's going on with students. I can tell you what drives most of them, what motivates them. How you need to approach them if you want to get some certain goals met. And I just feel like if we put that same intentionality and that we do it, knowing these, my wife says, empty stats or empty, useless information about these athletes and sports teams, if we put that same intentionality with academics, we'll be better served. And that's something that really drives me, and especially with the elimination of DEI and our athletes going to these schools in the South that are basically saying, hey, we really don't care about you as an ethnic group. And I speak about that in my book, even before it became prominent, while it was still being edited. I say, you can go to these HBCUs. If you worry about money, the NIL will follow. And when we have NIL deals in high school down here in South Florida now. So you follow the money follows the talent. And if these folks are telling you, like I said before, be who you are, these folks are showing you who they are. If they're showing you who they are, you must believe them and go where you have people that have your best interests in mind. And that drives me with the consultant company and also with my book writing.
Dr. Cooper, you just said a whole lot there, and I hope that those that are listening will understand that one thing, that last part of what you just said is more important than anything, because for so long and for so many years, this has been talked about, this has been said about athletes from underserved and marginalized communities that are outstanding, that are top of the state rank in all of the rankings and the things that they do. They choose to go to these places, and now you see that those very same places are not doing anything to talk about your rights or anything of the sort. But let me just say this to you, because I know you, since you're a big avid sports fan like I am. Well, let me just ask you this, so you can give me your opinion. Now, all of a sudden, that the players are getting their due diligence and being paid for their likeness, how about now the NCAA is claiming broke and going broke and calling foul? And so now this is because after now the players are being paid. What do you think about that?
It's America. This is what happens. As soon, think about all of these black communities that were burned to the ground, and interstates were ran through because they were thriving. My wife and I had this discussion just last night, and with the gerrymandering and changing the rules, moving the goalposts. America has always been fine as long as they have one ethnic group, no matter how poor you are, no matter how downtrodden you are, that one ethnic group that I can look down on and say, at least I'm better than them. Once you take that from them, they are not going to stop until they get that back. So if I'm poor and my car is broken down, I can look at a black man and say, at least I'm better than him. If his car is working, he has a thriving business, I can't have that, because now he looks better than me. Even at my darkest and lowest, I'm better than that. And that can't be. And that's the mindset. So I say that to say that's the mindset with the NCAA. I think Nick Saban is a great coach, but I have issue with him possibly being the face of college football in terms of dealing with NIL, especially from a man that was able to use that to his advantage, stockpiling players. So
all that.
When I was in college, a friend of mine, he always said, it ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun. So now these players have power and monetary power. Oh, I can move from school to school. The coaches do it all the time. You sit in a single mother's or grandmother's home and promise these things to these boys and these athletes, and then you'll leave them after a year. And now they're stuck, in the past, but now I could go somewhere else and I could play. Now, I'm not all in on going to 3 and 4 schools and playing until you're 25 and what have you. But I will say I went to school with a number of athletes that if they had this opportunity, they would have turned out being great, successful people. And some of them, that's all they had, and they turned out to be incarcerated or killed because the athletic thing was the only thing that they had. Now, if they had an opportunity to go to school and get some money, maybe they invest that. Maybe they would turned out that way anyway, but it was more of an opportunity. But as soon as we get that power, we got that power, they're going to change it. And I understand there's some athletes saying, hey, I'll sit here and make this NIL money because it is much more advantageous for me to do this than to go to the league or try to go where I'm not even going to make this. But they didn't come up with that idea. These people came up with that idea to get the players legally without sanctions. They've been paying them under the table since the 70s. And now you move the goalposts. But again, that's a microcosm of America. That's what America is. And especially for the black athletes. It is what it is.
I still don't understand, why is it that for the life of me, why they can't actually sit there and think, I'm going to an HBCU. That should even be an issue. As you say, the NIL money is going to come regardless of the case, because the people are coming to see you.
Right.
If they're coming to see you, why can't you go to the HBCU and make those schools understand that you have got the power? Yes. You see, that's the brainwashing, though. That's what's taken away from our communities. And when you actually have them face that situation, they get upset with you for pointing out that truth. Because they say, I can't be great unless I go to Alabama. I can't be great unless I go to Florida. I can't be great unless I go to Tennessee. That's bull crap.
Exactly.
Doug Williams came from Grambling.
Yeah, absolutely. Walter Payton.
Yeah, Jackson State.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Yeah. There's many of them. Deacon Jones. We got many of them. Even Michael Strahan. But You know,
Yeah.
it's just it's a shame, but I think we're going to turn the corner. And then what the other thing that upset me is even when we had the light shine brightly upon the HBCUs when Dion went to Jackson State, and there was some pushback. Oh, he didn't come from. Man, we all came from somewhere else. Let's not say we we wasn't we didn't come from the Alabama Crimson Tide. Most of us, where he
Right.
came from. He came from an urban neighborhood. I mean, he happened to go to Florida State and got paid on the table. He was playing minor league baseball. We were there at the same time. We were a year apart. He was at Florida State. I was at FAMU. Had a car, convertible, all of this.
Right.
We can't push people away because they're outsiders or he's not swag or he's not HBCU. Hey, man, I need this help and I need our kids to go where they want it. And I need them to go to a place that accepted them from the beginning. People, they forget so quickly that these Alabamas and these other schools didn't want us at all.
Right.
Bear Bryant didn't even integrate until SC came and had those black
And beat that butt.
and
Beat that butt.
put that belt on, beat to 8.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. So our kids don't realize that, and it's a shame. And I'm hoping that I could, reach some of them because I talk about that, and it would be amazing to see it flip because it would, because all the best athletes, and that's not racist. It is what it is. Look at the rosters across football and basketball, at least. Okay. And those rosters are filled with our star black athletes, and they will be on HBCU teams. And we're not going to turn away any white athletes. When you look at our baseball teams across the board, we have plenty of Hispanic, and white players. So even on our football team, we don't turn anyone away. But it will be flipped, and we just have to it's to see that. And it's a shame that they don't. But I'm gonna give it my best try to push that by all means.
Well, I'll be doing a show on changing trends and times about that very thing in 3 weeks. I'm doing a 4-part docuseries right now on what's happening with these voting rights and everything else since Reconstruction.
Yes,
and so I just wish people could just see that because I try not to be to the point of being like, oh, I'm pushing this, but I am pushing this because I want you to see. So I just want to put it out there for you to see, and you make the decision. So if you're making that decision to continue to go and be repressed because you feel it's best to be repressed because you feel like you can get more money being repressed, then hey, I can't do nothing about that. But that's saying that you don't know your worth and your value because you don't honor yourself to do that.
Exactly.
That's all that's saying.
Exactly.
So what gap in education were you trying to fill when you started Posit DJC?
Again, the information that's important to our students is not as readily available, I think it is to our counterparts. And I wanted to be a tool to bridge that gap. I want you to get in school. I want to help you while you're in secondary school. And we want to keep you in school. And if you have designs on going to grad school, we want to do that as well. Because I learned one thing at Florida A&M, and I'm sure it's true across all HBCUs. It's harder to get out of this school than it is to get into. And once I get you in, then I want to be there to assist, to help you get out. And I think that's very important. I can't tell you how my classmates went and didn't finish. And they went on to do great things to be successful. But if you have that extra piece or backing to help you stay, and know and experience some of the things that you're going to experience in school, the long financial aid lines. And, I had a scholarship, and now they're playing with my money, and things of that nature. I went through all of that, classes that you can only take one semester is only offered in the fall, and if you can't get in, now you got to stay an extra year. You need support for that, and you need somebody that experienced that can tell you how to handle that and travail that and not give up. So I wanted to do that because I didn't have that, and I think I would have done better, had I had it. and it wasn't available to me. So I want to make it available for those that want to go that route, and it keeps me going, and hopefully it'll be something that's sustained. That's why I put my children's initial on it, because it means that much to me.
So what makes your behavior systems different from traditional models?
Well, as I stated before, classroom management to manage is to control, and I don't think we should approach behavior as a controlling something that we control, or having a controlling mechanism. I think if you approach it as in creating the desired behaviors and cultivating those behaviors, we know what creating means, and to cultivate is that continued growth. And I aspire to get those children and students to not only behave in the classroom, in the school, but beyond. I should be able to expect that behavior when I'm not around you. I was always taught, it's the way you do things or behave when people are not looking. And also speak on, I wouldn't advise turning your back on your class, but you should get to a point where you can be able to do that and not be worried. So all of the punitive approaches, and also we have folks that are trying to be something that they're not. If your teaching style is one way, I can't go over and do what Mr. King is doing. If Mr. King's personality is more in your face, as you will, and mine is not, that's not going to work for me. The kids know that's not who you are. Now, you can take tidbits from Mr. King and you can apply that to your methodology, your approach with your kids, but you have to go about it your own way, and everything can't be punitive. And you have to allow those kids to feel a part of what the rules and the processes are. Make them a part of that. I used to, when I was in the classroom, I used to let the kids tell me what they think the rules should be. And I told them at the end of the day, if we were in a non-block schedule, or at the end of the week, if we were in block, I would get all of the rules that they suggested and take the top 5. Those kids are going to come up with the same thing you want to come up with. And I think we kind of overdo it with the rules. You shouldn't have more than 4 or 5. And all of them shouldn't be, don't do this, don't do that, don't, please do this. We should always do this. It should be more welcoming, and our kids, I know they say they're more aggressive, and I believe that to a certain extent, but I think a lot of it is we are slow to change our approach to discipline, you know, allowing them to be a part of it, and they're owning if they're a part of it. Stop managing them, and try to create desired behaviors that they want to carry and continue on, and I think that's something that needs to be done, because you can't move those test scores and statewide assessments if you don't have control of the kids' behavior, and you can't teach your class if you don't have the behavior taken care of. It's the kids will shut down, and you have to be invested. You're going to have to be an investigator. You're going to have to, professionally find out what's going on and help these kids. You got to have different strategies. Sometimes moving close to them, proximity. You should be able to move close while you're teaching and get a child to straighten up. But these are things that you have to practice and put in place. And it takes commitment to do that, and you have to be genuine and concerned to do that. And if I'm not concerned with my kid, and in their worst moment, and they know you're not concerned, you're gonna have a hard time, controlling or cultivating, I should say, creating and cultivating that desired behavior. So I make it a point with my kids. Hey, I like those shoes, man. Those shoes look good today, James. Hey, I heard you did well in the basketball game. Yeah? You got 4 rebounds, and that goes a long way. And I'm not BSing them. I actually know these things. Other kids will tell me, or I just observe, and that goes a long way in investing in your kids. A kid, mom is ill. How's your mom doing? And I might ask that question maybe once a week for a month. And they appreciate that. I had a kid, and I think he was his medication was, he was ADHD, and his medication wasn't up to par, and he was giving us the business, throwing food, he peeping over stalls, pulling down pants. For a year and a half, maybe 2 years and a half, just, I'm like, oh my God. So I would call, and I called that parent so much to until she would answer the phone. I say, this is Dr. Cooper. Oh my God, what did he do now? And suspended multiple times, and just a headache. And he would do well for a while, and then he would backslide. Well, he finally hit a plateau. I think may have been his meds were leveled off. They had the right dosage. But I made sure that I called that parent, and I made sure that I talked to that student. And on multiple occasions, I say, man, I'm proud of you. What? I said, you're doing well, and I'm proud of you, man. Behavior, man, you're doing excellent. And I knew you could do it. And that child appreciated that. I called the mom, and she did her normal. Oh God, what is it? I say, no, oh God, Mom. I said, I'm calling you because such and such is doing well. I'm proud of you, and whatever you're doing, I'm proud of him. She started crying. So you have to, I want to call parents to acknowledge a great behavior as much, if not more, than I call when they're doing something wrong. You gotta overpraise. It should be, your praise should be greater than your correction. And I talk about that in my next book. And it has to be genuine. You don't praise just to praise. It has to be genuine. And that's something that I think goes a long way as well. And you have to know there are going to be outliers. You're not going to be able to help everyone, but you have to attempt, you have to try, and you have to go about it with grace and understand these kids are individuals and not one size fits all. And what we went through and the way discipline was handed down when we were in school, that doesn't work now. That doesn't. The policies, they're slow to change, but that doesn't work. Not at all.
Dr. Cooper, I'm going to ask you, can we have you come back and we complete this conversation? Because there's a lot of things we didn't get a chance to cover, but this was truly a great show.
Oh, absolutely. I really appreciate you having me, and I had a blast. I really did.
Yeah. So in closing, do you have some words of wisdom and encouragement that you would like to leave with our audience? How to connect with you via your social media, your website to get your books, all of those good things?
Well, my book is on Amazon. I don't know if you guys can see that, The Black Man Manual. You can also contact me on Posit DJC, which is .com, POSIT DJC .com. Words of encouragement. I just want to go back to something I said earlier. I got from my mom, and also life experience and professional experience. Be where you are. Be totally committed to whatever you're doing. Be there. Be all in. Be who you are. Be genuine. You don't want to have a facade. You don't want to put up a facade. And have grace with whoever you come in contact with. And if you genuinely want the same for others, and even more than you want for yourself, that will be conveyed, and you'll reach more people, and you'll be able to change lives positively.
Well, I want to say, I want to thank you again for being here. I want to tell the people out in our audience, I appreciate you all for staying and watching this show, but we will pick this up on our next show. So we'll have Dr. Cooper back. For those of you that are watching on all of our YouTube channels, especially, if you have not yet subscribed and enabled all notifications, I would appreciate your support because as we're growing, I want to make sure that all of the great people that we have come to the show, that you're able to connect with these professionals as well as learn from not only the work that they're doing, but how they are doing that work, because we need to continuously unify and build and grow our communities, especially in today's times. So in closing, I want to say this in this monologue. Tonight, we witnessed the power of purpose. Dr. Robert C. Cooper II reminded us that leadership is not a title, it is a responsibility. Discipline is not punishment, it is love in action, and education is not a job, it is a calling that shapes the future of our communities. From the lessons of his parents to the revolutionary teachings of Malcolm X, from the band room to the boardroom, from from the classroom to the consulting arena, Dr. Cooper has shown us what it means to lead with integrity, and courage, and vision. As we close this episode of American Black and White, let us carry forward the reminder that our children deserve structure, our schools deserve strong leadership, and our communities deserve champions who refuse to give up on them. Thank you, Dr. Cooper, for your service, for your scholarship, and your unwavering commitment to our people. Good night, family. Stay inspired, stay informed, and stay empowered. We will pick up again next Monday on America in Black and White. But tomorrow we have another great show of Changing Trends and Times, where we will continue our 4-part docuseries. And on Sunday, CK Stories from the Heart, where we have another compelling story that will come across that show. Y'all have a great weekend. Thank you for your time. And we will see you guys next week. Dr. Coop, can you hang around for us?